how does one move about the world without committing sins of, I guess, colonialism as a traveler? Or is it not possible? Is it inherent in your view, moving through the world with a lens of exploration or recreation? Are we inherently kind of performing or reenacting colonialism?
I don't think so always. I don't think it is always in and of itself a colonial act to travel or to be a tourist, because we did talk a lot about that false distinction in our class of like, oh, a tourist is a bad person and a traveler is a good person. And it's like, how are like these are classist distinctions, these are racialized distinctions. Like, what are we really talking about when we're talking about these things? And so I definitely think, and I think I've tried to talk about it in my class a lot, because a lot of the times when people do these readings about colonialism and tourism, they feel like, oh, so there is no good way for me to go anywhere. Like, I'm stuck where I am and I should never leave. And that's certainly not the point. I think that the way in which you can travel and not reenact the bad power structures of our global pasts is to recognize your position and also just educate yourself. I think that at the end of the class, what I was hoping folks would take away was that it's like, if you're coming to Puerto Rico, which they all did on spring break, read Eating Puerto Rico by Cruz Miguel Ortiz Quadra, and like have a sense of history in your brain and how these foodways developed. Have a sense of the economics, the demographics, the language. Have like build some knowledge base for yourself before you go to a place. I think because of social media, because travel can sometimes be very affordable, we're in an age of, it's like you're just kind of collecting places and collecting stamps on your passport. And it's like, no, I think we need to get back to a place where we slow down a bit, we do some studying before we go to a place, and we really know what we're getting into. We know who we are in relationship to these people, and we go forth with that knowledge. And we also accept that, like, to be a tourist means to be a tourist. It means that the local experience is going to be different, and your presence will shift all the dynamics that you are in, and that's how it is, and that's okay. And so it's that kind of, just understanding what's happening when you're in a place, I think, is super important. And so, yeah, and food is such a good way of doing that, I think, because trying to understand how a cuisine developed, why it developed in a certain way. I mean, when we're talking about Puerto Rico, we're talking about Spanish colonialism, we're talking about slavery, we're talking about US colonialism. We're talking about continuing to have like sort of a special relationship with Spain. So there are things that are cheaper that aren't as cheap as they might be in the States. And so like it's a really, these dynamics that you're jumping into, like, you have to understand them, and food is a good way of doing it, because you're understanding history, you're understanding economics through that. And so I just feel like my perspective on this is just, if you're going to a place with knowledge and coming at it from a place of honesty, generosity, like curiosity, that perhaps you will make a faux pas. We will all make faux pas, but like, you're not, that's the best possible way to do it.
I love that. As always, so much of it just comes down to educating yourself so that you don't, arrive on a continent and think that you're in India and you actually are not even in the US. You might even be in Cuba and
Yes.
be thinking that you're in the whole other part of the world, right? So maybe don't do that. Like, not only know where you're going, but certainly don't have the arrogance of let's say, Columbus, to arrive in a place that you have really no knowledge about, and then to start to act like it's your own. Is maybe a mild way of summarizing that. Let me, that's good stuff. So let me ask you before, I know we're going long, but you're just, it's so rich. I need more. Fake meat, This has been an area of ridicule. I feel, obviously, rightfully so. I've never actually consumed any fake meat in my life, but feel pretty close to this critique, um, based on a story that I wrote once in 2016 about, a food waste company called Imperfect Produce. I'm sure they're doing very well in the world these days. Um, but my general position was like, this is bull. We are celebrating a problem that we created. This is creating wealth for people who don't need it. Follow the money, all the stuff you know, right? And so when I was looking at this kind of fake meat or meat alternative, I know we're not really rocking with that verbiage, but like whatever you like, plant based alternative, all of the stuff that's now in the lexicon. For me, the thing that was being missed was the same critique that I was making of this, food waste company, which is like we're chasing our tail and not we're turning this into a winner take all game of venture capital, and not a thing that, as every founder says, in the pursuit of venture capital is going to change the world for the better. It seems like it was really inevitable and imminent and here. And it feels to me now, just as fast as this stuff showed up on the scenes, we're now in a retreat moment with a lot of these well funded companies across the board. What have your observations been as a careful student of this arena? And how should we read this, I guess, like retreat? Is it a trend, or is this going to come back like, after Reconstruction and bap us on the head like Jim Crow?
Well, I think so. Okay. I think that when we talk about fake meat, we have to distinguish which fake meats we're talking about. And I think for folks who do eat meat, I think that this past moment from like 2016 to now of fake meat, like Impossible Burgers, like Beyond Meat, this has been for omnivores. Like this has been a performance for omnivores of like, look how close we can get to meat. Whereas like people who don't eat meat or haven't eaten meat for a long time, like we already had veggie burgers or boca burgers and like Morningstar Farms and corn and like we would make seitan and we would like wrap mushrooms in yuba or whatever we were doing that we had learned how to do because we had to learn how to do it, like became suddenly like, I mean, because these things weren't one for one copies of me, they were always going to be like fringe elements in the food world.